Now, what's interesting about all this, of course, is that each of these not only flowed money through the shell companies to Hunter Biden, but each of them also involved important meetings with, of course, President Biden. And so on December 4th, we have coffee with Jonathan Lee, who was one of the members who started Bohai Harvest, and he was connected with the CCP. They were having trouble getting licensed to work because, of course, the CCP has to get permission for that, until Hunter flew over on Air Force Two with Vice President Joe Biden at the time. They met with Jonathan Lee. Hunter introduced him. Joe ended up writing a letter of recommendation to Jonathan Lee's daughter to get into college. And then we see that this relationship continues to be formed. Of course, in the Ukraine, we know that April 16th, 2015, Joe Biden had dinner with a Burisma official at Cafe Milano. Seemed to be a popular spot because Joe Biden also had dinner with Keynes Rekeshev there. All in flow to going here. And of course, as Tony Pawlinsky has pointed out several times, this all comes down to eventually the one big guy who gets 10% for the big guy. And so we know that all this money flowed through this to get to Hunter, and then we know, of course, that 10% went to the big guy. So, Mr. Bobulinski, does this general pattern of Hunter offering foreign access to Joe Biden, Hunter gets paid, and then Joe gets a share of that, is that basically what the general practice across many of these shell companies were?
Congressman, as I outlined, the big guys, clearly Joe Biden. The details of some of those transactions I was not involved in, but that's clearly how they operated.
But that's the pattern that we've seen over. And Mr. Galanis, you said at the beginning that Hunter didn't really provide any sort of intellectual propriety asset value or anything of the sort, that his entire value was the brand. Is that correct? How did you state that?
Yeah, we didn't rely on him for any work product other than delivering the Biden lift.
The Biden lift. And one more question for you, Mr. Galanis. Did you offer to provide information on Hunter Biden and Devon Archer back in 2016 to prosecutors and the SEC, and what happened there?
Yes, through counsel, I had offered to provide information specifically on that to the SDNY. And I subsequently also did the same thing to the Securities and Exchange Commission, which was interested in, subsequently was told to quash that interest. I understood that to be an order from the Southern District of New York to quash the SEC information.
Thank you. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair now recognizes Mr. Goldman for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I only have 5 minutes, Mr. Bobulinski, so I'm going to try to move quickly, and I'd appreciate if you just answer the questions. You testified that Joe Biden was involved in your business venture related to Oneida Holdings and Hunter Biden. So I want to drill down on the crux of what your testimony is. Oneida Holdings is the business venture that you are referring to, correct?
When I'm referring to what? Can you
Any business you did with the Bidens?
My reference is the Sinohawk Holdings LLC, and Oneida Holdings LLC owned 50% of that.
Right. And Oneida Holdings was the 50% that was on the American side of that Sinohawk deal, right?
It was the 50% that was the Biden side of it. Some of the, James Gillier is not an American, so.
Sorry, fair enough. And it was a joint partnership memorialized in an incorporating document, correct? And it had equal shares divided among 5 partners. Is that right?
Well, I can't.
Well,
are you asking me about what you're holding up? Because
sir, was it an equal? Were there equal 20% shares among 5 partners?
In what?
Oneida Holdings.
In the final signed documents?
Yes.
Is that what you're asking me?
Yes.
It is?
It's not complicated.
Well, it is because.
All right, you're just filibustering now. The answer is, you're filibustering, I get it, that there were 5 partners, Hunter Biden, Jim Biden, Rob Walker, James Gilliar, and you. Each owned 20%. Do you
Well, they didn't each own, their LLCs owned it, which is a material
do you
difference.
see Joe Biden or an LLC related to Joe Biden on this?
I don't know if Joe Biden owned any of Jim Biden's LLC or Hunter Biden's LLC. I'll leave that up to the committee.
Okay. And do you know when this agreement was entered into?
The poster
Take it
board that
down.
you're holding up or the actual legal document that was signed?
The agreement, sir.
The agreement.
The agreement was signed May 22nd, 2017. Who was the vice president then?
May 22nd, you said? I think it was Mike Pence.
And who was the president?
Donald Trump.
Okay. And when did you first meet Hunter Biden?
I first met Hunter Biden in early 2017.
When? When in 2017?
A day or
The month.
an hour
Month is
or
good.
a month? I believe I briefly met him in New York, but I spent the first meeting I had extensive time with him was in early May 2017.
Okay. And that was around the same time that you had those two meetings with Joe Biden, right?
It was, but prior to that, I had numerous
So, look,
discussions
you have
with
said,
Hunter.
you have said
I had
that-
lawyers
Sir,
working through the documents that you're
Can I
asking.
please reclaim my time, sir? As I said, we have to move quickly here. Unfortunately, in your testimony earlier today, one of my colleagues asked you about that meeting at the bar, 45 minutes to 60 minutes. And you were also asked about that in your transcribed interview. And in neither of your answers did you mention any discussion that you had at that meeting with Joe Biden about the Chinese business venture. Yet, in grandiose terms here today, you have declared that Joe Biden was involved and that you have mountains of irrefutable evidence to support it. So let's look at the mountains of irrefutable evidence. You provided the committee with a screenshot of a text message that is between James Gilliard and you, dated May 11th, 2017. You see this? I don't know if you can see it. If you can't see, it's just you and James Gilliard, though, right? You remember this text message, I'm sure.
Generally, yes.
All right. And in it, Gilliard writes, "Man, you are right. Let's get the company set up, then tell H and family the high stakes and get Joe involved." And 2 days later, Mr. Gilliard sent an email to you, CCing Rob Walker and Hunter Biden, in which he suggested a division of the company and included a proposal of, quote, 10% held by H for the big guy, question mark. You remember that, right?
The infamous email with the big guy? Yes,
Yeah.
I do.
Did anyone ever respond to that email?
Yes, they did, numerous times.
Sorry. Did
Hunter
anyone
Biden
ever-
himself
excuse me,
did.
Excuse me. You're right.
Well, no, I
Did
think
anyone
that's
ever-
important because
Sir,
Hunter
did
Biden
anyone
has
ever
claimed that he didn't
Can you answer my
respond to it,
questions?
and he responded to it, I
The-
believe,
you're just going to
times.
filibuster. I reclaim my time that's running out, but I will say no one responded to the big guy reference for 10.
Thank you
So
for making my
what-
point. They didn't have to respond
Right.
because
And
they
then,
all knew the big
sir,
guy was Joe
I
Biden.
reclaim my time. Mr. Chairman, please control the witness. I would like to get a little extra time, Mr. Chairman, because I want to read what Mr. Gilliard said to the Wall Street Journal. Quote, "I would like to clear up any speculation that former Vice President was involved with the 2017 discussions about our potential business structure. I am unaware of any involvement at any time of the former Vice President. The activity in question never delivered and project revenue. 9 days later, the agreement without Joe Biden was signed. You and James Gilliard wanted Joe Biden involved, and that is why Hunter Biden dumped you and did the business
That's a
on his
blatant
own.
lie, Mr.
And I yield
Goldman. You
back.
know better.
Chairman's time's expired. Chair now recognizes Mr. Higgins from Louisiana for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bobulinski, thank you for being here today, and we appreciate the candor of your responses, sir, which is reflective of the way you handled yourself in private testimony and deposition. So I thank you for communicating truthfully to the American people today. I'm going to ask you about the China Energy Fund Committee, the CEFC. You familiar with that, sir?
I am.
Was this a multi-billion-dollar company, like a Fortune 500 company at one time?
It's even bigger than that. If you go back and look at its financials in 2016 and 17, it was probably one of the 5 largest private companies in China.
So exactly. So this was a major operation that had a lot of money, and apparently, I'm going to hold up a memo here from this is a chart from the second bank memo, and it shows disbursement of a total of almost $24 million for diamonds. So you have a major Chinese company spending a lot of money on diamonds, and apparently diamonds were used as a means of payment for the Biden family. We know that the Bidens have testified that admitted to having 2 diamonds. We suspect that there are many, many more, $23 million worth of diamonds. Are you familiar with the exchange of valuable assets to pay the Bidens other than electronic transfers of monies? Are you aware of payments in diamonds, payment in cash, payment in board memberships, et cetera?
Am I generally aware of it,
Yes,
or was
sir.
I involved? Yeah, I read Jim Biden's and Hunter Biden's transcript multiple times. Jim Biden in that transcript references 2 diamonds that were given to Hunter Biden. One, he implies, was in 2015 by an individual who he couldn't recall his name, but the individual's name is Scott O., who was a surrogate for CFC. And then apparently a second diamond was given at a meeting in Miami. And I really want to set the record clear. I was not at that physical meeting. I was in Miami, but I was not at that physical meeting. That's what I told the FBI in my transcribed interview.
Are you aware, Mr. Bobulinski, of a pattern of bribery, of bribe payments coming from the China Energy Fund Committee?
I appreciate that question. I wish everyone on this committee would read the 1,200 pages of testimony in an 8-day trial in the SDNY where Mr. Goldman used to work while the actual trial was going on, that accused numerous executives, ultimately Patrick Ho, of corruption, bribing, leaving shoeboxes of cash to a variety of political figures in Africa.
Exactly. So, Mr. Bobulinski, from your perch within the Biden family operations and their interactions with major businesses in China and the exchange of millions of dollars that are known, we've tracked them through bank records, through suspicious activity reports, through emails, through communications that this committee has documented. There's no debate that millions and millions of dollars flowed into the Biden family's bank accounts. But the existence of other forms of payment is fascinating because diamonds are untraceable. We really don't know how many diamonds the Bidens received, do we?
We don't. And for somebody who's been to mainland China probably 10+ times, Hong Kong probably 15+ times,
Yeah,
I had hundreds of people, Congressman, I had hundreds of people working for me in mainland China. At one point, I never got a diamond from any businessman or woman.
So, Mr. Bobulinski, I shift quickly to a text message. Are you familiar with this? It's from a gentleman named James.
Generally, yes.
Yes, says, don't mention Joe being involved. It's only when you're face to face. I know you know that, but they are paranoid. And there's a response saying, okay, they should be paranoid about things. And then there's a response saying, for real. So what is meant by don't mention Joe being involved? It's only when you're face to face. I know you know that, but they are paranoid.
Well, I think it outlines how the Bidens operated, not specifically just with CFC. You have Galanis here testifying and numerous other witnesses that have given you tremendous amount of evidence that outline they worked to obfuscate it, create layers of obstruction. That's the reason why Rob Walker was getting sent millions of dollars instead of Hunter Biden directly. That's the reason why Devin Archer was receiving millions of dollars instead of going to Hunter directly. You guys have a mountain of evidence that stacks high and answers that question on how they obfuscated. They lived in a world of plausible deniability.
Thank you, Mr. Bobulinski. Mr. Chairman, my time has expired. I yield.
Chair now recognizes Ms. Norton from D.C. for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Galanis, thank you for appearing voluntarily for this hearing from Alabama. I understand you are currently serving a 189-month sentence in federal prison, almost 16 years, after being convicted of not one but two but not one, not two, but three different schemes. The victims of your schemes, as the judge who presided over your criminal prosecution noted, included, and here I quote, one of the poorest Native American tribes in the country, as well as pension funds held for the benefit of transit workers, longshoremen, housing authority workers, and city employees, hardworking people, everyday people, among others. The court also noted that you personally benefited from these schemes, and again I quote, using over $8 million, almost $9 million, for lavish personal expenditures, including home expenses, automobiles, travel, clothing, jewelry expenses, and meanwhile, investors were left with nothing. But this is not your only encounter with prosecutors. In another case, the Security and Exchange Commission charged you in 2005 with accounting fraud in connection with your involvement with Penthouse magazine. And in 2010, you were convicted of attempted tax evasion and were sentenced to 5 years probation in order to pay nearly $2 million in restitution. In imposing your prison sentence, the judge noted that you are, and here I quote, an extremely talented man, extremely gifted in his interpersonal skills, uncommonly so. He is very persuasive as an individual, and those were the tools in his tool bag of the fraud he committed and the people he ensnared, his intelligence, his interpersonal skills, his charm, if you will. And this is something that is not unseen in people who are commonly referred to as con artists. Another judge who presided over your case referred to you as, quote, a skillful con artist. A skillful con artist, that is who my Republican colleagues are relying on to carry their water in this sham impeachment inquiry after their last star witness, the author of the infamous FBI Form 1023, was indicted for lying and outed as a likely Republican agent. It is time we put an end to this pathetic and desperate inquiry. I yield my remaining time to Ranking Member Raskin.
Ms. Norton, thank you very much. So for more than a year now, we've heard innuendo, rumors, propaganda, big lies, but no facts, no evidence that could reasonably support the finding of impeachable high crimes and misdemeanors against President Biden. In our first real impeachment hearing, the majority invited several expert witnesses who came together, and their witnesses agreed with that there was nothing that remotely approached the level of proof needed to support a finding of high crimes and misdemeanors that one would impeach a president for. And now we come back again today, and the majority has two witnesses. One, the designated con man as determined by two different federal courts, not without talent, but someone who deploys his talent towards the purposes of exploiting Native American Indian tribes, pensioners, and other innocent investors. And then Mr. Bobulinski, who offers a lot of rhetoric and a lot of hot air, but absolutely no facts that could indict the President of the United States for high crimes and misdemeanors, impeachable offenses against the Republic, the kinds of offenses which James Madison said are great attacks on the Republic itself, great affronts to our Republican form of government. And nobody on their side can even tell us what is the impeachable high crime and misdemeanor, which suggests that they are moving in the direction of criminal referrals, and they should start by looking at their own witnesses. I yield back to you, Mr. Chairman.
And I'd like to remind the ranking member and Ms. Norton, the witness, Mr. Galanis, was partners with Hunter Biden. That's why he's here. We have their partners. You could have invited partners, but you invited this guy.
Yeah, Donald Trump's partner, Mr. Parnas, who was working
he
with
was
Donald
Donald
Trump and Rudy Giuliani.
Rudy Giuliani's partner.
Okay, yeah. All right. Chair recognizes Mr. Groffman.
Yeah, we got a variety of things I'd like to go through, but first, Mr. Lynch complained about Mr. Galanis testifying from prison. So I'd like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record the Department of Justice's own press release announcing the sentencing of the Democrats' witness, Lev Parnas, to 20 months in prison for, among other things, making false statements.
Without objection on Donald Trump's partner. You're
Thank you. Now, Mr. Chairman, you know, we had originally hoped that we'd see a few more witnesses to here today. They're not here, but I would like to run a brief tape because I showed up today hoping I'd be asking these witnesses a little bit more about this tape. I know that, you know, there's some mystery, or some people feel it's still ambiguous as to how this prosecutor was fired in Ukraine, and I wonder if this tape could do a little bit more to shed light on why that prosecutor was fired and why we want Hunter Biden and Mr. Archer here today.
And so I got Ukraine, and I remember going over convincing our team, or others, to convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over for, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to the press conference. I said, no, I said, I'm not going to, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, what, 6 hours? I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who...
I just wanted to put that up there because I do eventually want further efforts made to get Hunter Biden or Mr. Archer here, because we have Joe Biden himself bragging that they got rid of a prosecutor who would have provided his son's business dealings with a little bit more tough going, or more observation. I'll put it that way. Now, Mr. Bobulinski, in previous interviews, in previous interviews with this committee, you said that Joe Biden not only knew about the family's business dealings, but enabled them and participated in them. You went so far as to say, it's clear to me that Joe Biden was the brand sold by the Biden family. Could you elaborate a little bit why you felt that way again?
Correct. That's one of the challenging things I've had to deal with over the last 4 years, with the focus of just simply telling the truth. The obfuscation around these facts are just beyond insane. So I'll use a meeting at the Four Seasons Hotel in Washington, D.C. that I was not at, but apparently 8 to 10 Chinese executives of CEFC were at, with Chairman Yi and Director Zhang. Director Zhang I interacted with extensively. And James Gilliar was in that room, Rob Walker, Hunter Biden was in that room. And my understanding, based on Rob Walker's testimony, is that Joe Biden walked into that room, sat down, shook hands with people, and spent 5 or 10 minutes talking about his family, I guess. I was not in the room. People have tried to obfuscate that meeting like Joe Biden was walking in there to ask about the weather. And Rob Walker said that the Chinese didn't even know that Joe Biden was the former vice president of the United States, which is beyond absurd. The power that those 10 Chinese individuals had to go back to mainland China and say that they were in a room with Joe Biden is the value of what they were giving.
Okay. You stated that the Biden family concocted a scheme to give Joe plausible deniability. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, I would just point to all the different text messages and communications. They call him the big guy. I wasn't involved with Mr. Galanis or Mr. Archer, but they're giving you numerous data points. There was obfuscation. They didn't use his name. They used the big guy. You weren't supposed to talk about it. It was just, you know.
And you personally met with the vice president?
I did twice.
Okay, and it was obvious. Did he say anything that indicates that you wanted him to help his son, that sort of thing,
Well, he thanked me for helping his son and his brother and asked me to keep an eye on them as I walked him out to his car after he gave his speech on the second meeting of the Milken Conference.
Okay, just one other follow-up, and this is kind of maybe a vague question, but I'd like to know it. One of the things that disturbs me about that is the interaction with the Chinese, or that's what we're dealing with today, but obviously other countries as well, that apparently in their own mind, the way you deal with the United States is the way you deal with say, a corrupt city council or something like that. In other words, you know, you give them money and you get what you want. Do you want to comment on that, or did you hear any stories about that, or did you hear stories that they were surprised how easy it was to buy the U.S. government?
Well, I think
it was time's expired, but answer the question. But please feel free to answer the question.
Yeah, I think CFC, and there's tremendous evidence, believed that they were bribing the Biden family, and they were doing it via Hunter Biden.
It's kind of shameful. Thank you.
Very good. Chair now recognizes Mr. Khanna for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Parnas, can you tell me about your meetings with Dmitry Firtash and why you believe the Trump campaign used his services?
Yes, well, I was sent to meet with Dmitry Firtash because Dmitry Firtash had resources. He's an oligarch that was in Vienna waiting to be extradited to the United States. But he was very close with Vladimir Putin, Ukraine, and lots of characters in that part of the world. And my objective at the time was to have him help us lean on Mykola Zlochevsky and get dirt on the Bidens.
And what type of dirt were you trying to get?
We were searching for Hunter's hard drive that we were told was out there. We were searching for bank records to validate certain bank records that was given to me, Hunter's personal bank records that was given to me by John Solomon that he said he got from the FBI to validate certain payments that were going for car purchases. But the objective was to try to find a link from any of the payments that would go into Joe Biden's account.
And who told you to get this dirt?
Well, who told me? Rudy Giuliani.
Anyone else that you remember?
John Solomon. I mean, everybody that was part of the team. I mean,
did Bill Barr know that you were involved in getting this dirt?
Absolutely. Bill Barr was notified of our investigation from the day he took office.
Did you ever have a conversation with Bill Barr of being lenient towards Dmitry in his role, in Bill Barr's role as Attorney General?
I personally did not, but I was witness to Victoria Tunzing and Joe DeGenova having a conversation with Bill Barr about Dmitry Firtash.
What did they say to Bill Barr?
Basically, they were telling him that the charges were false and that he needs to drop the charges and basically end the case.
And why did they tell him to drop the charges on this Russian oligarch?
Because Dmitry Firtash was going to help us getting dirt on the Bidens or whatever else the Trump campaign needed.
So my understanding is you have the Trump campaign telling you to talk to a Russian oligarch to get dirt on the President of the United States for political reasons, and then someone from the Trump campaign is talking to the Attorney General to drop the charges because this foreign national is helping get dirt on a political candidate?
Absolutely.
Did Bill Barr indicate any willingness to drop the charges?
After a meeting that Victoria Tunzing and Joe DeGenova had with DOJ, they came back and informed me that we're going to Vienna because to tell Dmitry Firtash everything's going to be okay.
Do you know if Bill Barr in any way told you to say that?
I was not privy to in that meeting, no.
Do you have any evidence that Bill Barr would have indicated to signal to Dmitry that the charges would be dropped?
Only from conversations from Rudy Giuliani or Victoria Tunzing.
And what did they say about what Bill Barr said?
They basically told me that this would be taken care of as long as Firtash played ball, and that's the message they relayed to me to tell Firtash.
And they said that Bill Barr was conveying that to them directly?
Yes, after meetings. There were several meetings. There was a private meeting at where Rudy Giuliani went and bumped into actually Bill Barr at the Trump International Hotel, and he used that as a moment to take him aside, speak to him. And then there were certain official meetings through official channels where Victoria Tunzing met with him. So, yes.
Do you know anything, if anything was done with the charges?
Till this day, Dmitry Firtash is not here.
Do you believe that Bill Barr should be investigated for his conduct in potentially dropping these charges?
I absolutely believe that, but not only that, I believe Bill Barr should be investigated into the cover-up and trying to silence me to get the truth out of what really happened in Ukraine.
And explain the cover-up and what you believe he should be investigated with your last minute.
My arrest was set up strictly to shut me up, to seal my documents, take away all my information, and turn me into a crazy man that had no way to prove what was going on. But the real story was Bill Barr was trying to save Donald Trump from impeachment and use me as a scapegoat. What he didn't realize was Donald Trump was not going to stop and was continue doing what he wanted to do, and that's why it blew up in Bill Barr's face. He also hired special counsel at the time, Brady, to look into Ukraine. When we tried to reach out, my attorney to special counsel Brady, he never returned our phone call. Nobody wanted to hear anything I had to say that had to do with Ukraine, Donald Trump, or Rudy Giuliani.
Mr. Chairman.
Will the gentleman yield?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Parnas, I just want to say you have stuck to the facts today. We don't hear bombast and rhetoric from you, but you're telling a true story, and you've conducted yourself with great purpose and great dignity, and I know your son is here with you today, and I hope he and the rest of your family are proud of what you're doing for America. Yield back.
Thank you.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Donalds from Florida for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. It's been an interesting hearing so far. Let's actually get to the actual paper trail of money flow from the CEFC into the bank account for President Joe Biden. And I want to start with a text message, July 31, WhatsApp text message between Hunter Biden and one chairman, one Mr. Zhao. Real quick, Mr. Bobulinski, who is Mr. Zhao?
Congressman Donalds, I'd just actually like to spend 20 seconds. If you noticed, Congressman Khanna scurried out of here very quickly, and I'm actually disgusted as I sit here that he didn't address me based on the fact that I'm sitting here in front of the world trying to testify to the truth. In October 2020, I have messages I'm willing to produce to both the Democrats and the Republicans that Ro Khanna sent to me saying, you have always demonstrated to me that you're nothing but an honest with the highest integrity individual, and I was begging for him to go on CNN and tell the world in October 2020. I have extensive emails with Congressman Ro Khanna in 2021 and 2022 where I begged him and his staff to sit down with me and look at my BlackBerry phones that the Democrats are so focused on, to hire forensics experts and go through all of the factual information I had. So the fact that he did not even address me and then scurried out of here is disgusting to me.
All right.
Sorry, Mr. Donalds. I'll answer your question now.
All right, so we're going to have to come off of that because now we're at 3 minutes, 30 seconds.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, I want to submit into the record 2 different WhatsApp text messages. One, July 31, between Hunter Biden and Mr. Zhao of CEFC, which stipulates that Hunter Biden wants to be able to move on from and get the contract resolved, get the deal resolved, and that Mr. Zhao responds and says, yes, the CEFC is willing to cooperate with the family. On August 31, there's another exchange, this time August 3rd, 2017, between Hunter Biden and Mr. Ganwei Dong. And in this message, they're talking about the stipulations of the arrangement between the Biden family and CEFC. I want to submit both WhatsApp text messages for the record, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection to order.
Okay, now to the money flow, because this is where the rubber meets the road. On August 3rd, they actually stipulate through WhatsApp text messages the exact stipulations of the deal. On August 4th, $100,000 is wired into Owasco PC from CEFC infrastructure. Mr. Chairman, I want to submit for the record a portion of the bank statement for the time period August 3rd of 2017 to August 31, 2017, stipulating $100,000 going from CEFC into the bank account of Hunter Biden through Owasco PC.
Without objection to order.
On August 8th, 4 days later, $5 million is then transferred from the Northern International Capital account of $5 million to Hudson West III. Hudson West III is a bank account controlled by Hunter Biden and Mr. Ganwei, a.k.a. Kevin Dong, who was a CEFC associate. That money comes from the Northern International Capital bank account that is tied to the CCP. Mr. Chairman, I want to submit for the record the bank statement demonstrating that transfer.
Without objection to order.
Okay, moving on. On August 8th, the same time period, there is a wire transfer of $400,000 to Owasco PC from the Hudson West III bank account. That $400,000, Mr. Chairman, I have the transfer records in the bank accounts from the August time period. I want to submit that for the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Now, here's where the fun stuff comes in, everybody, and I got a minute to do it, so we're going to get this done. On August 14, there is $150,000 that is transferred from Owasco PC, which is controlled by Hunter Biden, to Lion Hall Group, which is controlled by James Biden. I have the records here, Mr. Chairman, of the $150,000 that has gone to Lion Hall Group from Owasco PC. I want to submit that for the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
On August 28th, and I believe we have a screenshot for everybody in the room, on August 28th, Mr. Chairman, we have the withdrawal ticket from Lion Hall Group that is signed by Sarah Biden, who is the wife of Jim Biden, for $50,000 to withdraw from Lion Hall Group. I want to submit that withdrawal receipt for the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
On September 3rd, on August 28th, actually, Mr. Chairman, we have the deposit reference into Sarah Jones Biden's account on the same day she withdrew it from Lion Hall. I want to submit that.
Without objection, to ordered.
Last document. On September 3rd, 2007, from Sarah Biden's own personal account, there is a check that is written to Joseph Robinette Biden, Jr., the President of the United States today, for $40,000, signed loan repayment. A loan repayment, by the way, that Joe Biden's own personal accountant, Mr. Eric Schwerin, has no record for. I want to submit that for the record, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection, so ordered.
To the members of the committee, it is clear that the source of this money came from CEFC, and that CEFC is a company that is directly linked to the CCP and actually the chairman of the CCP, the chairman of the Chinese Communist Party, Chairman Xi Jinping. With that, I yield.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman, I've got a UC request, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
First, White House for sale, the staff report of the minority side, which details the CEFC's business interactions with Donald Trump. They own a $5.5 million unit in Trump World Tower and others. And then the Department of Justice press release announcing the sentencing of Jason Galanis in federal court to a term of 189 months in prison, ordering him to pay restitution of more than $80 million for 3 criminal fraud conspiracies against a Native American tribe, pension funds, and other investors.
Without objection, so ordered. Chair now recognizes Mr. Mafume for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm sitting here and imagining what I would be thinking if I were not here, but rather somewhere around the country watching the Congress of the United States, and in this case, this committee, for 15 months hold these hearings on Hunter Biden and come up with not one impeachable offense in all that time. 15 months. Over 10,000 documents and more, as you can see today as a result of that. This is a do-nothing Congress. And we should be doing the jobs that we were sent here to do, which is not to have investigation hearing after investigation hearing over and over and over again, and then run to our favorite TV outlet to give interviews afterwards. We were sent here to get a job done. Taxpayers are looking at all of us. Meanwhile, Americans, black, white, Asian, Latino, Native American, and their families are wondering what the hell is going on. Is this another investigation hearing in this 15 months that has yielded nothing at all? It's the do-nothing Congress. You thought Harry Truman said it in 1948. Anybody can say it today. Look at what we've done in 15 months. Virtually nothing. Nothing at all. Senior citizens sit in their homes and watch C-SPAN or some other outlet carry this. Some of them sitting in nursing homes, all of them worried about losing their Social Security. They're on fixed incomes, and they expect the Congress to use its time and its energy to deal with things that affect them directly. Students are defaulting on loans to colleges all over the country, and no one wants to talk about that. Health care is inadequate in most places in this country. And diseases are ravaging our communities, and people assume that at some point the Congress will deal with that. And so whether it's cancer, cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, diabetes, HIV, stroke, the disparities in the health system say, please, please give us a little bit of your time also when you're not dealing with Hunter Biden and when you can't prove that he's done anything wrong. Crime is out of control, white collar as well as black collar. And assault weapons are still being used every day to shoot and kill innocent children and Americans. And we're sitting up here talking about something that we've talked about for 15 months with no substantial evidence. Can't get humanitarian aid to Palestine. Can't get military aid to the Ukraine. Children are looking and wondering what the hell is going on. Is that what politics are about? So we are doing a disservice. I know I'm supposed to be asking questions, and Mr. Parnas, I may have one or two for you, but I am so outraged at a do-nothing Congress, just pointing the finger over and over again, and people are hurting, looking for real help. Can't deal with immigration because Donald Trump calls up and kills the immigration bill, and yet people say that's a major issue, is it? I haven't seen the sort of attention that we thought we were putting to that or anything else. And so this particular hearing will probably be followed by another hearing and another hearing and another hearing until this Congress expires in January of next year. And we haven't done a damn thing to move the ball forward, except make accusations. Life is too short. Now, maybe some of you have a guarantee you're going to be around forever, but I don't. I came to this body first in 1987. I worked under Ronald Reagan and the first Bush and Bill Clinton and Donald Trump and now Joe Biden. This Congress is not doing anything. It's not like the previous Congresses, trust me. That's why people have such a low esteem of those of us who say, well, I'm Congressman so-and-so. People on the street don't buy that. They don't see the action. So I'm done. I know I've exhausted my time. Mr. Parnas, a couple of quick questions, and I'll let you go. Is it your understanding that Rudy Giuliani worked for an individual identified by the Trump administration as a Russian agent?
Yes.
Do you know what these Russian line actors were trying to do? Quickly.
Push a conspiracy theory about the Bidens.
Did you know that, did you warn Rudy Giuliani?
Yes, I did.
And what was his response, succinctly?
He told me that he agreed with me, but then proceeded to work with these people behind my back.
And these people have been identified as Russian agents.
Yes, sir.
And we've got a meeting here of Mr. Giuliani with one of those. I'm disgusted, as most people are, about this process. And the only way we get to a point where we get things done is that we learn to talk to one another across the aisle without having another conspiracy theory after another one after another one. You don't buy trust that way. You buy contempt. I yield back.
Chair recognizes Lisa McClain for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start off by saying I think most Americans are taught at a very young age that you are who you surround yourself with. I think keep that in a premise. As I sat here and listened to everyone talk about how Hunter Biden is just this golden boy. I mean, are we really supposed to believe that Hunter Biden is the golden boy? His associates, such as Jason Galanis and Devin Archer, are felons convicted of fraud, yet he is the golden child. I want to talk about examples of Biden's influence peddling scheme. This time, it was Romania. It follows the same general pattern as we have seen with other countries like China, Russia, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan. Here's the pattern. It's really simple. A corrupt foreign oligarch needs access to the U.S. government. Hunter Biden sells influence to the U.S. government. The oligarchs pay up. So let's just take a deeper dive into this Romanian scheme. Mr. Bobulinski, who is Gabriel Popovich?
Gabriel Popovich is a businessman from Romania, probably worth hundreds of millions of dollars, I'd envision.
Okay. Is it true that Gabriel Popovich faced corruption charges in Romania in 2015?
It is.
Thank you. And when you were in Europe with the Bidens to close on that CEFC deal with the Chinese, you separately negotiated with Popovich to get a 17th payment. Is that also correct?
I did.
Okay. But Popovich did not want to pay him. Is that correct?
Correct. You're talking about a 17th payment that would go to Rob Walker, and then Rob Walker would distribute to Hunter Biden.
That is correct. And is it because Hunter Biden had failed in the work he was engaged by Popovich to do, which was to get the corruption charges dismissed by the Romanian authorities? Isn't that correct?
Well, it's two things, that they had failed to do that, but also that Joe Biden had left the White House at that point.
Okay, so there's a dot. So I get 16 payments while Joe Biden's in the White House.
Correct.
But after Joe Biden leaves the White House, coincidentally, the payments stop.
Correct.
Okay, just want to make sure that we can connect the dots very simply.
But obviously wasn't a coincidence.
Right, I'm not much for coincidences, which neither are the American people. But Mr. Bobulinski, what do you think Popovich wanted Hunter Biden to do?
I don't have to think, because Gabriel told me personally he expected, and didn't want the details, he expected Hunter Biden, Rob Walker, and James Gillier to do whatever was necessary to impact his case in Romania.
How do you know that?
Because Gabriel Popovich told me that.
From his mouth?
Yes.
Okay, so there's another dot that we can connect. Would that be a conspiracy theory?
That's not a conspiracy theory.
Okay, thank you.
I would encourage you to interview Gabriel Popovich.
Thank you. Lastly, after claiming he wanted a public hearing, Hunter Biden decided to skip today. Why do you think he skipped the hearing today?
Is that a rhetorical or serious? Well, I don't think he wanted to sit next to me, because obviously I've emphatically stated he perjured himself in his transcribed interview with the committee, as did his uncle, Jim Biden. And for every fact he claims or wants to say I was high on drugs or obfuscate, I can show a document, a text message, a recording that is confirmed that he's lying.
Well, let's not let the facts get in the way of a good story, right? Here are the facts.
Highly disappointing that he's not here, though.
I would agree. Here are the facts. Hunter Biden was engaged by a foreign principal, Gabriel Popovich. It is well known that Hunter Biden met with the ambassador to Romania, Hans Klem, in November of 2015. Hunter Biden was not registered under FARA. He stopped getting paid as soon as his father leaves office, until you got Popovich to send Hunter Biden one more payment. Seriously, what services was Hunter Biden providing to the Romanian oligarchs for millions of dollars? We've yet to hear it. As far as the committee knows, Hunter Biden was never registered under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. If the Department of Justice applied the same standards it did in the Paul Manafort case, Hunter would be in more trouble than he is already in. Mr. Chairman, there are real FARA issues here that we need to continue to look at. And with that, I thank you for being here, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. Thank you. Good job. Chair now recognizes Ms. Ocasio-Cortez from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bobulinski, I heard your opening statement. It's submitted to the record, part of our proceedings. I have a quick question. Simple. Is it your testimony today that you personally witnessed President Joe Biden commit a crime?
I believe the fact that he was sitting with me while I was putting together a business deal.
Did you witness the president commit a crime? Is it your testimony today?
Yes.
And what crime have you witnessed?
How much time do I have to go through it?
It is simple. You name the crime. Did you watch him steal something?
Corruption statutes, RICO, and conspiracy.
What is it? What is the crime, sir? Specifically.
You asked me to answer the question. I answered the question.
No.
RICO, you're obviously not familiar with. Corruption statutes.
Excuse me, sir. RICO is not a crime. It is a category. What is the crime?
It's a category of crimes that you're then charged
You have charges.
A long 100
You have charges. Sir, please
Want me to name the exact statute
Sir,
under RICO?
yes.
Oh, well, it's funny. In this committee room, everyone's not here. There's over 18
All right, sir, I reclaim my time.
lawyers that went to law school.
I reclaim my time.
You guys
okay,
to
thank
define
you,
the
sir. I
statute
reclaim my
under
time.
RICO.
Clearly, what we are seeing here today is a continuation of the 15-month saga of the Republican majority lost in the desert. Impeachment 101. The majority party, or whomever is raising impeachment, must accuse the president of a high crime, a specific high crime or misdemeanor. I would like to submit to the record HRes 918, the House resolution to open this impeachment inquiry.
Without objection to order.
This resolution does not outline a high crime or misdemeanor. It's not here. Now, when we compare the chairman's opening from his previous opening, he's talking about Ukraine and Burisma and all of this. This entire inquiry is based on a blockbuster piece of information that was in a classified SCIF room. And inside that room was a document alleging President Biden directly of a $10 million bribery scheme, a $10 million bribery scheme, extremely serious. What happened? What happened a month ago, Mr. Chairman? That document, the FBI arrested the person who offered those allegations for falsifying his testimony to the FBI. This entire impeachment inquiry is based on an actual, provable individual who has lied. Now, responsible leadership would withdraw an inquiry based on that. Withdraw it. Instead, what we are seeing is that this committee was warned about the falsehoods of these allegations long before that, warned by Trump's Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and yet they proceeded anyway. The chairman proceeded anyway. This committee was warned by Rudy Giuliani associate right here, Lev Parnas, after that document about the falsehoods of this. Then held hearings where your own expert witnesses said that there was no grounds for impeachment, and you proceeded anyway. And finally, as if none of this was enough, the FBI arrested the individual who was the source of the entire, to quote the chairman, heart of the matter, to launch this impeachment inquiry, and proceeded anyway. At this point, the story is not the fact that the basis of this impeachment inquiry is wrong. The story is why it's proceeding anyway. Why is this committee proceeding based on false charges? And by the way, no charges. I have yet to hear in the chairman's opening the allegation that they are specifically charging the president of the United States with. I'm hearing about Biden family. I'm hearing about this and that. I am not hearing the specific allegation by this committee. What is it? It's not here, and that is the problem. The story is when this committee knew that they were working with falsified evidence. That's the story. And with that, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair now recognizes Ms. Mace from South Carolina for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On March 1st, 2024, Joe Biden stated he did not interact with Hunter or Jim Biden business associates. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to enter into a record New York Post article. Biden insists he did not interact with his
Without objection to order.
We're going to go fast here. I have strictly yes or no questions. On that note, the New York Post article, Joe Biden also said, read the record of every single witness. So I did. I first read Devin Archer's deposition, and he interacted with Joe Biden. Then I read the transcripts of Wab Walker, Eric Schwerin, George Burgess, Kevin Morris, Tony Bobulinski, and Jason Galanis. And every single one of them interacted with Joe Biden. And that's just the people we interviewed. Mr. Galanis, my first questions are for you. Did Hunter Biden call Joe Biden with Elena Baturina on the line on May 4th, 2014, yes or no?
Yes.
In that call, did Hunter Biden state on this call with Joe Biden that everything is good and we're moving forward?
Yes, he did.
Okay, on the same call, did Joe Biden in the call was saying, okay, then you be good to my boy?
Yes, he said that as well.
Okay, did Badarina agree to put $20 million into one of Hunter Biden's business projects days later after this phone call?
Yes.
Okay, did Hunter Biden ever take a call from Joe Biden while at the Peninsula Bar in New York?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Did Hunter Biden ever take a call from Joe Biden while at the Peninsula Bar in New York?
Yes, he did.
During this call, did Hunter Biden update Joe Biden on progress in landing a business partnership with Harvest Fund Management?
Yes.
Okay. Was Harvest a $300 billion Chinese financial services company closely tied to the Chinese Communist Party?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Is Hunter Biden involved with Harvest?
Hunter Biden is involved in Harvest in two ways: through BHR, which is a fund.
Yes or no? Was Hunter
Biden
Biden involved with Harvest? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. As part of the deal,
extensive emails to that effect.
As part of the deal, did Hunter Biden want the company to reserve a board seat for Joe Biden?
Yes.
Okay. Did Henry Zhao, a Chinese businessman, want assurances Joe Biden would join the board? Yes or no?
Yes, he did.
Okay. Did
He's
Hunter
expressed
Biden
that in emails as well.
Okay, thank you.
And
Did Hunter Biden draft an email stating, "Please also remind Henry Zhao of our conversation about a board seat for a certain relation of mine. Devin and I golfed with that relation earlier this week, and we discussed this very idea again. And as always, he remains very, very keen on the opportunity." Here is a photo of Joe Biden and Devin Archer and Hunter Biden golfing days before the alleged email draft. Do you believe a certain relation of mine refers to Joe Biden?
I don't think there's any question. It was based on first-hand conversations with Devin Archer, who was in that picture and at that golf meeting.
Did you ever meet with Devin Archer where Hunter took calls from his father?
Yes.
Okay. During one of these phone calls, did Hunter Biden tell Joe Biden that he and Henry Zhao needed help getting, quote, getting across the finish line?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Mr. Bobulinski, do you recall receiving an email that floated the possibility of giving 10% ownership of Sinohawk to Joe Biden through Hunter Biden?
Yes.
Okay. My last questions are for both of you very quickly. Mr. Bobulinski and Mr. Galanis, you both stated you were told not to use Joe Biden's name in communications, correct, Mr. Bobulinski?
Correct.
Mr. Galanis?
Yes.
Okay. Did Joe Biden participate in phone conversations and meetings with Hunter Biden, his business associates, and foreign interests? Yes or no? Mr. Bobulinski?
He clearly did.
Okay. Mr. Galanis, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. In Hunter Biden's deposition, he said he did not involve his father in his business. Did Hunter Biden lie under oath? Yes or no? Mr. Bobulinski?
Yes.
Mr. Galanis?
If that's what he said, yes, that would be true.
Is Joe Biden lying when he says he did not interact with Hunter Biden, Jim Biden, their business partners, or forward interests? Yes or no?
Yes.
Mr. Galanis?
Yes.
All right. In a debate on October 22nd, 2020, Joe Biden denied Hunter Biden made money from China. Then Hunter Biden, his business associates, and foreign interests include money from Chinese businesses, business partners, and/or interests. Yes or no? Mr. Bobulinski?
I'm sorry. Did the
Hunter
Biden family
Biden
make
money from Chinese
Correct.
business interests?
Yes.
Mr. Galanis? Did Hunter Biden receive money from Chinese business interests? Yes or no?
Yes, he was.
Okay, thank you.
He had economic interests, and yes.
All right. Joe Biden has
regardless.
repeatedly claimed that he was not involved in Hunter Biden, Jim Biden, or any other Biden family business deals. Today, our witnesses have proved otherwise. Today, we've established Joe Biden lied about interacting with Hunter Biden's business associates. It is my belief Joe Biden is the closer for Hunter Biden, Jim Biden, and their business associates and foreign interests. Good luck to the left proving otherwise. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair now recognizes Ms. Porter from California.
The title of this hearing is Influence Peddling, Examining Joe Biden's Abuse of Public Office. Look, the impeachment inquiry is dead. If it was on life support, my colleague Ocasio-Cortez just killed it. There is no allegation of a specific crime. President Biden didn't do anything wrong. There's zero evidence of that. And still, both Democrats and Republicans and the media treat these hearings like the Super Bowl. But no one ever wins, and Americans always lose. So I've got a fresh direction for this hearing. All we have to do is cross off the part after the colon. There, just influence peddling. We should have a policy discussion about how to stop government officials from using their positions to get money or favors. Now, that is a real hearing, one that nearly every American, regardless of party, wants us to hold. We could start by talking about how senior executive branch officials can leave public service, wait just 1 year, and then legally become lobbyists for big corporations, scoring their new employers profitable government contracts and favorable regulations. They can even be paid by the big corporations during that short 1 year while they are waiting to become lobbyists as a down payment for their future ability to peddle influence. That's wrong. For the panel of witnesses, by show of hands, as Americans, would our witnesses support extending this 1 year waiting period to at least 2 years?
No, I would.
Okay, so there we go. Republicans, Democrats, even convicted criminals, everybody supports that we should do more to stop influence peddling. This is the kind of good government reform that Americans of all political stripes support. And I should know, in 2022, I passed that exact reform as an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act with a bipartisan majority vote. What happened to that amendment? Why didn't it become law? The answer is simple. Nearly 500 former members of Congress work for lobbying firms. And too many people around here want to follow in their footsteps, and so don't want to make it harder for government officials to become lobbyists. Ultimately, Democratic leadership under then Speaker Nancy Pelosi let the amendment get stripped out of the final bill. When I offered up the amendment again during this Congress, Republican leadership under then Speaker Kevin McCarthy never even put the amendment up for a vote. Both parties have let us down on fighting influence peddling and tackling corruption. But I'm hopeful we can begin a new approach in this very committee. The American people should know that regardless of party, should know that an investigation was conducted into whether Joe Biden did anything wrong. We followed the evidence to where it led a dead end. So this impeachment inquiry should end today. And where should we go from here? We should stop partisan attacks on each other and address the real problem, that the American people believe that the rules that prevent corruption are way too weak. To stop politicians on both sides of the aisle from influence peddling. This committee should be working together in a bipartisan way to change the culture of Congress, to crack down on influence peddling and corruption, and just as importantly, to stop the perception of it. Let me give you some facts. I don't even need a whiteboard for this one. 495 former members of Congress work for lobbying firms. 467 members of Congress take corporate PAC money. 78 members of Congress violated the Stock Act last Congress. Clearly, we have our work cut out for us. So let's start the conversation today on what a bipartisan ethics reform package could look like. Here are the organizations that could have come today as witnesses so we could have had a productive conversation. Oversight staff, do you have your notebooks ready? Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, Common Cause, Project on Government Oversight, Public Citizen. With the right witnesses and the commitment to doing what the American people want, this committee can have a real conversation about the problem of influence peddling. And we can pass legislation to create badly needed ethics guardrails. That would be real work, not a real circus. I yield back.
Before I recognize Mr. Timmons, Ms. Porter, I think you are sincere, and I look forward to working with you on that legislation.
Chairman, can we take a 5-minute break? I need to go to the bathroom.
Let us get one more, and then we'll do that. Chair recognizes Mr. Timmons for 5 minutes, then we'll take a break because we have votes coming up anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At our hearing last July, I laid out the scheme that the Bidens concocted to sell the Biden brand, netting almost $30 million for various members of the Biden family. This scheme was repeated with various clients in Kazakhstan, China, Romania, Russia, and Ukraine. I'm going to spend my time on just one instance, Ukraine, specifically involving Burisma, which netted Hunter over $3 million during a 3-year period. And to clarify the criminal offenses being alleged, for Hunter Biden, it is conspiracy to commit bribery, 18 U.S.C. Section 201 B, 2A, and C. And for Joe Biden, it's conspiracy to commit extortion under color of official right, 18 U.S.C. Section 1951 B2. And if you want a refresher on those, just look up Senator Menendez and his wife's indictment. So let's start with this. Foreign client has a problem. I've got an email here from Vadim Pozharsky, the Secretary of Burisma. And he is advocating that Hunter Biden intervene with high-level U.S. officials to facilitate meetings and communications expressing their positive opinion of Zlochevsky, the president of Burisma, to the Ukrainian president, chief of staff, prosecutor general, with the ultimate purpose to close down any cases against Zlochevsky in Ukraine. This is dated November 2nd. Now, keep in mind, and again, foreign client has a problem. Zlochevsky is being investigated by Viktor Shokin, the Inspector General of Ukraine, and he needs help, the Biden brand. So here we got bank records galore of Hunter Biden receiving, prior to this email, over $1 million. After this email, $2 million. You'll find out in a second he really earned his fee. So again, client pays a Biden $3 million. Next, what happens? What happens? This is great. 11 days later, we have the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine announcing that Vice President Biden is traveling to Ukraine on December 7th. Oh, interesting. Vice President Biden travels to the country. Here we got a great photo of him touching down. They're very proud of themselves. So Vice President Biden leverages U.S. policy to achieve a favorable outcome for the client. We've all seen the video. He brags about leveraging U.S. foreign loan guarantees to get the Ukrainian government to fire Viktor Shokin to end the investigation. Again, we've got the email from Pozharsky saying that we need to leverage you, who have not provided value yet for your $1 million in service, Hunter. He brings in the big guy. Biden leverages U.S. influence, withholds $1 billion in loan guarantee to fire Shokin. So if that's not enough, we got the victory lap here. We got an email just a few months later saying, whoa, we won in less than a year. You brought us in, so take a victory lap. So look, I mean, this is straightforward. Pay to play. It is bribery. Hunter Biden was paid $3 million at the lowest point in his life. He testified in the deposition that he was drug addicted, that he's never been to Ukraine. Yet he's paid $3 million to get his father to go to solve his client's problem. That is the scheme. Mr. Bobulinski, does this sound like the scheme that you've seen the Biden family do?
I wasn't involved in Ukraine, but the facts surrounding this are very similar to CFC and Romania.
Thank you for that. So this is the thing. If Hunter Biden were here, we would be able to ask him some questions, maybe clear this up. But he's not. He's not here. And what's interesting is that just yesterday, Peter Navarro reported to federal prison in Miami for 4 months for not showing up in front of the January 6th committee. And I want to point out to everybody that the January 6th committee was procedurally defective under House rules. It was procedurally defective because the minority leader did not get to appoint members to that committee. The United States House of Representatives Oversight and Accountability Committee is a procedurally perfect committee. And we have authority to subpoena Hunter Biden, and he has to show up. He has to answer these questions, and he has to tell the world that his father didn't leverage U.S. foreign policy so he would get $3 million. This is no different than what Senator Menendez did. And look, the American people are not buying this nonsense y'all are selling. We must restore their faith in our institutions. And we have to stop this ridiculous two-tiered system of justice where the Department of Justice persecutes President Trump and hides Hunter Biden behind every corner. I mean, this is not the United States of America that the American people deserve. and we have to get our country back on track. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, parliamentary inquiry. Did the committee subpoena Hunter Biden today?
Chair recognizes, pursuant to the previous order and at the request of the minority witness, the chair declares the committee in recess for 10 minutes. Then we're going to come back in here, and then we may have to recess again for votes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today's hearing is another unfortunate attempt by my Republican colleagues to muddy the water in an election year with no proof, no evidence, no wrongdoing at all by President Biden. The American people are tired of this charade. As I said before, my Republican colleagues simply grasp at straws that do not exist. While House Democrats in the Biden-Harris administration work to cut costs of prescription drugs, expand student loan forgiveness, and mitigate the threat of gun violence, Republican members of Congress continue to chase after Russian disinformation campaigns from the 2020 election, which have been thoroughly debunked again and again. And, as usual, in this committee, we know who is in charge. It is the bondless, broke bluffer, twice impeached, 4 times indicted, insurrection initiator, election denying, self-declared dictator on day one, and puppet for Putin. The one who wants to terminate the Constitution and defund the FBI. The one who romanticized exchanging of love letters with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. The one who just last week embraced autocrat Orban of Hungary to discuss their diabolical plans to destroy our democracy. The one who proposed a policy to ban Muslims from this country. The one who just this week said any Jewish person who votes for a Democrat hates their religion and Israel. The one who called neo-Nazis carrying tiki torches chanting Jews will not replace us, good people. The one who referred to African nations as, I quote, shithole countries. The one who called NFL players, the majority whom are black, sons of bitches for taking a knee in protest of the ever-present racial inequality and police brutality that continues to pervade our justice system. The one who called Mexicans rapists and promised to build a wall and have them pay for it, and in case you missed it, it didn't happen. The one who told women of color from the born in the United States, elected to Congress and serving on this very committee, to go back to their own countries. The one who bragged about grabbing women by their private parts. The one who confused his rape victim, whom he claimed was not his type, for his very own ex-wife. The one who is an admitted and committed adulterer who attempted to pay off a porn star for her silence. The one who has publicly mocked people with disabilities. The one who dodged the draft and referred to prisoners of war as losers, the very people who pay a high price so we could enjoy the freedoms that far too many of us take for granted. The one who boasted about being able to stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue to shoot someone and not lose votes. The one who promoted political and physical violence multiple times, including most recently at my rally in my home state of Ohio, where he declared there would be a bloodbath if he didn't win. The one who intentionally denied COVID was deadly and eventually suggested injecting bleach into our bodies to kill the respiratory virus that took the lives of 1 million people in the United States. The one who ordered his son-in-law get top secret security clearance, overruling concerns flagged by intelligence officials, who, according to this committee's chairman, admitted the former president's son-in-law crossed the line of ethics by accepting a $2 billion investment into that very same son-in-law's fledgling firm only 6 months after leaving the White House. If any of this sounds crazy, it's because it is. This might sound unbelievable, but it's all true. These are facts, indisputable facts, a thing that is known and proven to be true. This may be a foreign concept to some of my colleagues, but for those of us who still have a relationship with the truth, please know this is not an exhaustive list of inappropriate, unethical, and questionable behavior by the maniacal manipulator of Mar-a-Lago, because I could go on, but I only have 5 minutes. Yet here we are again, trying to make sense out of nonsense. I would humbly, respectfully ask my Republican Republican colleagues on this committee to stop falling over yourselves to win the approval of one, because millions of people are depending on you to defend our delicate democracy. And with that, I yield the remainder of my time to
Chair now.
the ranking member.
7 seconds.
Oh, I don't know that there's much time left, but thank you for that eloquent and compressed recitation of some of what we've lived with over the last few years.
Chair recognizes Mr. LaTurner from Kansas for 5 minutes.
Mr. Bobulinski, I want to talk about May of 2017. To be clear, Hunter Biden was doing business with CEFC while his dad was VP. Are you aware of that now? Yes. Rob Walker told us that during his transcribed interview before the committee. But I want to talk to you about your meeting with Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, and Jim Biden in May of 2017. Other members are going to bring up the meeting you had with Joe Biden at the Beverly Hilton the night before the Milken Conference, but I want to talk about the next day when you went as Joe Biden's guest to the Milken Conference. So, you watched Joe Biden deliver a speech that day. Then you had a follow-up conversation with Joe Biden. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
What did Joe Biden tell you during that conversation?
Well, as I've already publicly shared, I was brought backstage by his team because he had just given his keynote, and we just exchanged pleasantries, and then I walked him out to his car, and he specifically thanked me for the work I was doing with his son and his brother and asked me to keep an eye on them.
And my understanding is, Mr. Bobulinski, that after Joe Biden had left, you went across the street to the Peninsula Hotel and had a long conversation with his brother, Jim Biden. Isn't that correct?
I did.
It's my understanding that you asked him how the Biden family does the business that they do, while Joe Biden is such a prominent political figure. What was Jim Biden's response to you?
Correct. I was actually concerned and asking from a position of concern, and Jim Biden's response to me was plausible deniability.
Plausible deniability. And by that you mean Joe Biden would be kept in the loop, but you weren't supposed to talk about it, especially in writing. Mr. Galanis, during your transcribed interview with the committees, you said a very interesting phrase. Say it, forget it, write it, regret it. Does this sound familiar? Is this consistent with your understanding of how the Bidens do business, Mr. Galanis?
Yeah, very, very much so. That was an operating principle, yes.
But it looks like someone made a mistake. Mr. Bobulinski, you created 2 companies with the Bidens. I want to show you an infamous email discussing the ownership structure of one of those companies, CEFC. You can see on the screen, 20% for H, 20% for Rob Walker, 20% for James Gilliar, 20% for Tony Bobulinski, 10% for Jim Biden, and 10% held by H for the, quote, big guy. Mr. Bobulinski, who is the big guy?
The big guy is 100% Joe Biden.
Mr. Bobulinski, Hunter Biden didn't respond saying, knock it off. We can't include Joe Biden, did he?
No, and that's actually a critical point because remember—
Mr. Bobulinski, did you ever get a text message or a group text message or anything like that saying, guys, knock it off, Joe Biden isn't involved in this deal?
No, the whistleblowers actually have a text exchange where they're talking about everything else but that, and the reason why they weren't talking about it is because everyone knew Joe Biden was the big guy.
Hunter Biden begged for a public hearing, but it turns out he is too afraid of accountability to show up and tell the truth to the American people. But Americans don't need Hunter's testimony to know they are being gaslit by this president. It's blatantly obvious to anyone paying attention that Joe Biden is the big guy. The CEFC deal broke the say it, forget it, write it, regret it rule of the Biden family businesses, and now they are trying to cover it up. Joe Biden said repeatedly that his family never made a dime from China. But Mr. Bobulinski just confirmed that Hunter, Jim, and the big guy himself all got a cut from the CEFC China energy deal. Let me be clear. The only service the Biden family ever provided was their ability to leverage the office of the Vice President of the United States to cash in overseas. My Democrat colleagues are going to try and tell you that Joe Biden wasn't on the final ownership structure agreement, but isn't it true? If someone was holding Joe Biden's stake in the company, it wouldn't appear in the document. Isn't that the whole point of this email, to hold Joe Biden's stake so his name wouldn't be in the document? Isn't this just plausible deniability in action, Mr. Bobulinski?
It appears that way.
But plausible deniability only gets you so far. Now, I want to fast forward from May to the end of July of 2017 when the Bidens cut you out of the deal. I want to show you a message that Hunter sent to his Chinese business partners. Please put it up on the screen. Hunter writes, quote, I am sitting here with my father, and we would like to understand why the commitment made has not been fulfilled. So, when Hunter Biden is desperate for money, Jim Biden's old trick of plausible deniability doesn't cut it. And when desperate times call for desperate measures, Hunter Biden let the cat out of the bag, said the quiet part out loud, and gave the game away by calling on his father to help him shake down his Chinese business partners for the money. And it worked. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, just point of inquiry. What was the last image we saw that you put up? Where did that come from? I just want to authenticate that.
This is the Ways and Means Committee Exhibit 300.
Must be the Irish whistleblower note. All right. Not an inquiry, though. Anyway, Chair recognizes Ms. Stansberry for the last question.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to the GOP's day-long campaign for Donald Trump. I want to start with Mr. Galanis to help connect some dots that have not yet been connected in this hearing. Mr. Galanis, you are serving just under 16 years for, among other things, as has been said today, defrauding a tribal nation and specifically a tribal corporation held by the Ogallala Sioux, which is why you are testifying from a prison today. But I'd like to ask you, Mr. Galanis, have you had an attorney representing you before this committee that you retained last December, and that attorney's name is Mr. Mark Paoletta, correct?
That's correct.
And when you first testified before this committee in a taped interview, you were actually stopped by Mr. Paoletta from answering just a simple question about how you met him and who exactly was paying your legal fees. Now, I want to make sure that the American people understand exactly who Mr. Paoletta is, because he is, in fact, a former lawyer to Donald Trump, who served in the administration in the Office of Management and Budget, and was at the center of the Ukrainian pressure campaign for which Donald Trump was impeached. And in fact, Mr. Paoletta was Trump's chief OMB lawyer when he withheld aid to Ukraine to try to extort the Ukrainian government into investigating Joe Biden to support Donald Trump's campaign. And Mr. Paoletta literally wrote the memo to help withhold those funds. Now, I want to dig in a little bit on this pressure campaign, and Mr. Lev Parnas is here to discuss as an eyewitness who was there. Mr. Parnas, we appreciate you being here, and I want to move through this quickly, so just ask for simple yes and no answers. You've testified here today that Donald Trump repeatedly asked you, and through Rudy Giuliani, to put pressure on the Ukrainian government to dig up dirt on Joe Biden to support Trump's campaign, correct?
100% yes.
And as we can see here in this picture, you were very much a business associate of Rudy Giuliani during this time. And as established in your testimony, you traveled to and met with Ukrainian officials and told them that the White House would withhold its support and aid to Ukraine if it did not cooperate with this bribery, essentially.
That's correct.
And as we all know, Donald Trump's administration, and specifically the Office of Management and Budget, did withhold that foreign aid in 2019. And here's the guy who did it. And he's representing the witness who's literally on Zoom with us for this committee today. And it's the reason why Donald Trump was impeached the first time. And the man at the center of that scheme is involved in the House GOP's inquiry. But I also want to point out that Mr. Paoletta is also involved in and very much in bed with the Thomases. In fact, he represented Miss Ginny Thomas, Clarence Thomas's wife, in her involvement in the Stop the Steal before the January 6th committee, and actually also goes on vacation with Mr. Harlan Crow and the Thomases. So this man has quite an interesting roster and participation in this hearing. But the bigger picture here is that Mr. Paoletta's presence is yet another indication of the way in which this hearing and this impeachment inquiry is part of Donald Trump's larger misinformation campaign, just like it was in 2020, where in addition to pressuring and withholding aid to Ukraine, Rudy Giuliani and the Trump Organization, as Mr. Parnas has established, planted the story in the media. And now here we are 4 years later as they've dredged it back up and are planting it back in the media using Congress, using this committee, and using a baseless impeachment supported by Donald Trump's own allies on this committee to push that information out. As members on this committee have trafficked in false evidence that was planted by a Russian operative to the FBI and is now in jail for that. All of this is in the service of propping up the criminal enterprise for which Donald Trump is at the top and has already been twice impeached. Rudy Giuliani and others have been exposed as they continue to traffic in Russian disinformation that not only props up Donald Trump, but it props up Vladimir Putin himself and his goals back in Russia and in Ukraine. So I just want to point out here that once again, as I said when we had a false impeachment hearing a few months ago, that once again we see the
time's expired, gentlelady's time's expired.
Little hands of Donald Trump all over this hearing.
And just want to state, you made a mistake and said that Mr. Parnas was a Republican witness. He is very much your witness, not a Republican witness.
But I was a Republican for Donald Trump.
Mr. Chairman, I do not believe I said that, so we can...
Pursuant to the previous order, the chair declares the committee in recess due to votes. Subject to the call of the chair, we will reconvene 10 minutes after the 3 votes. All right, committee will reconvene. Chair now recognizes Mr. Perry from Pennsylvania for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Galanis, I'm going to turn my questions to you. I hope I can see you on the screen here shortly. Are you there, Mr. Galanis? There you are. Okay. If we can jump right into another Biden-Chinese deal made while Joe Biden was in office, a deal I think you described in your interview as a quid pro quo, where the Chinese sent millions in exchange for a post-VP job for President Biden. Can you tell us what was Burnham?
Yeah, so Burnham was an 85-year-old financial services company based in New York that owned an asset management firm and a securities dealer. But relative to the Chinese, it was an unimportant, small player. I'll give you a scale, $1.5 billion versus $300 billion Chinese company.
So what was Hunter Biden's interest in working with them, knowing that that was the situation?
I think Hunter Biden was already working with them through the fund that was created. The BHR, Harvest was the H, and is described in some of Hunter's emails that I have provided to the committee. He described the activity with BHR, meaning the Harvest activity, as one of his only focuses, and his other focus would be the activity between Harvest directly and Burnham directly in a combination. So his stated objective, in his own words, in writing, was those were to be his only focus, his only priority in working with the Chinese on a go-forward basis.
Did you also say that he said the interest in working with Burnham was to make billions instead of millions? Is that right?
Yeah, I did say that, and that was on the basis of looking to become a much larger company where his equity interest would be worth a lot of money, billions, not millions.
And you said the Harvest Fund was a $300 billion Chinese financial services company. Was it likely connected, or was it connected closely to the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese government?
That's my understanding.
Okay. And who was Henry Zhao?
He's been described to me consistently by Devin and Hunter as the chairman, but he's ostensibly the head of Harvest. I think he's had a couple of different roles over the years, but chairman is the best way. He was always characterized as chairman and the decision maker for that entity.
Right, so he's the chairman of the $300 billion Chinese entity connected to the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party, and he was based out of where? Where was his base of operations?
in Beijing, China, PRC.
And like you said, you heard him referred to occasionally as Chairman Zhao, right?
Most of the time it was Chairman Zhao out of a sort of a respect for the chairman, yes.
Okay, so now there came to a point where Hunter wanted to bring Henry Zhao, the chairman of Harvest, and their billions of dollars from China into business with Burnham. Is that right?
That's correct. That's correct, Congressman.
And why would he do that?
It was a financial decision. Chinese offered money, and he offered political access.
Okay.
It was in exchange.
Fair enough. It's pretty obvious what Harvest brings, right? $300 billion. But why would Harvest be interested in Burnham versus other financial institutions? I'm sure there are other ones out there, and like you said, it was fairly small. Harvest is $300 billion. Why would they care about this small Burnham? What was the interest for them?
I mean, the self-evident answer is the political access, and then sort of underscoring that is there are at least 2 emails produced that talk about exactly that, the influence of what Henry Zhao Hunter had characterized as Henry Zhao's interest in the access vehicle. So that was sort of explicit and in writing.
Okay, so Joe Biden was going to sit on the board of a Chinese company connected to the highest levels of the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party. Stepping back in your dealings with Hunter, what was the value that Hunter brought to the table?
It was the access to the inducement to induce companies like this Harvest Group to participate in Burnham. So it was we'll call it relationship capital that he brought to the table, not financial capital.
Relationship capital,
economic value to the business.
Relationship capital that you described as the Biden lift. What was the Biden lift?
Biden lift was simply Hunter's access to his father and his father's power and prestige in influencing the growth of a financial services business, which was largely reliant on its reputation and ability to attract other clients.
I'm running out of time here, but it sounds like a quid pro quo to me. Sir, what did Harvest did in fact invest money in Burnham? You called it a material inducement. Can you explain what that means? And do you know how much the Chinese paid?
I believe I was out of the picture toward the end of 2015. I believe that they ended up paying $4 million into Burnham. I believe, though, as a result of the legal entanglements that I encountered, that the transactions didn't happen in the way people expected or that they had written about in terms of what the Chinese were expected to do.
All right, Mr. Galanis, I just want one last question. I'm going to show you a draft email that you provided to the committee. Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Objection on time. Good job. Chair now recognizes Ms. Crockett for 1 minute, or 5 minutes.
1 minute. All right. First of all, Mr. Bobulinski, do you know who Elections LLC is? Yeah.
Mike.
Well, it's not a who.
Okay. Well, do you know what it is?
Yes, it's a LLC.
Okay. And is it the LLC that your attorney works for?
I believe so, yes.
You believe so. Okay. So at this point in time, I'd ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a document indicating that the law firm representing Tony Bobulinski was paid $10,000 as recently as January of this year by the Save America PAC, which you may recognize as Donald Trump's PAC.
Without objection.
Thank you. Now, so far in this hearing, it has felt like the worst episode of The Apprentice. I'm sure you're familiar with that show. It seems like my colleagues and maybe you and some others are trying to become the next vice president of the United States of America. You're auditioning or something like that, because
Mr. Bobulinski, I know that you take exception to the fact that your credibility has been called into question over and over, but when someone comes to testify under oath, whether it's before this committee, behind closed doors, or in person, then we have to evaluate someone's credibility. And sir, I definitely have always had issues with your credibility, as I know that you are very well aware of. So let me remind you of what happened behind closed doors.
Well, you should ask Ro Khanna about my credibility.
I haven't asked you a question. Okay?
You are?
When I haven't. So when I ask you a question, that's when you answer. Otherwise, I'm talking. So,
excuse me?
With my time, because it's my time, I want to be clear that when we were behind closed doors, you called a number of people liars. You called the Wall Street Journal liars. You called Cassidy Hutchinson a liar. You called the FBI a liar. You called Rob Walker a liar. You called James Gilliar a liar. You called Hunter Biden a liar. You called Jim Biden a liar. And just today, you added to your list, you called my colleague, Congressman Mr. Goldman, a liar as well. It seems like, according to you, the only person that's telling the truth is you, and everyone else is lying. But I want to move on to something else.
Is that a question?
It's not a question.
Oh, okay.
You'll know when I ask you a question, I promise.
Thank you.
So the other thing that I want to talk about is the fact that my colleague from the other side of the aisle talked about the company that we keep. And she wanted to go through a list of people that she felt like were bad company, because right now the majority has been relying upon the testimony of someone who's currently sitting in federal prison. And we know that your company is the company of somebody who's been found liable of fraud, as well as defamation, as well as sexual assault, and for whatever reason can't pay his bills at this point in time. But I'm going to ask Mr. Parnas, so this is a question to him. Are you aware if Trump had any associates that have been found guilty of anything?
Yes, lots of them.
Lots of them.
Me included.
You included. Okay, so when you were called here to testify, you weren't called here to testify for any other reason than to tell the truth. Is that correct?
Yes, Congresswoman.
Now, we started this whole sham off because of the 1023. And that was debunked by you, was it not?
Yes, Congresswoman.
Way before we started this impeachment inquiry. And you mentioned a number of times this guy by the name of Rudy Giuliani.
Yes.
Now, you know, everybody is so stressed about the fact that Hunter ain't here today. But, you know, Hunter came and testified behind closed doors for over 6 hours. And every single one of them, they weren't limited to 5 minutes. They could ask whatever they wanted to. And there's a full transcript of his testimony. So I don't know what else they wanted to do besides the fact that they wanted to put on a show. But let me tell you something. This whole thing is based upon something that Giuliani came up with.
Yes.
And we tried to subpoena him that's what I remember. If anybody else remember, we asked, we said, hey, we should subpoena Giuliani. But, you know, kind of like when we were trying to get his cell phone, they shut it down, right? Like, they don't want the facts. But you would agree with me that considering the fact that you were working under Rudy Giuliani at the time that you went over to Ukraine, that he has maybe some valuable information that he could offer this committee as to whether or not there's anything that we should be investigating in the first place.
Absolutely, Congresswoman. I wish that this committee would subpoena Rudy Giuliani, put him under oath alongside me to get to the bottom of the truth of what actually happened in Ukraine and to the manipulation that Trump and Giuliani and the team went to do.
I agree with you, but somehow it doesn't look like we're going to get there, and I thank you for your time. With that, I'll yield.
Time's expired. Chair now recognizes Mr. Biggs from Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Galanis, on May 9th, 2014, you received an email from Devin Archer confirming, or you wrote an email confirming that Ms. Badarina was investing with Burnham Investments, $15 to $20 million. Is that true?
Yes, Congressman.
And let's talk about the predicate for that. Ms. Badarina is the richest woman in Russia, and you knew her. And were you invited to a party that she attended?
Yes, in Brooklyn, yes.
Let's have the invitation up, please. And here's a copy of the invitation that you received. Is that right?
don't yet see it, Congressman. I did receive an email invitation, so
Yeah,
yes.
an email invitation. And did you go to that party?
Yes,